Okay, Matt, I don't have time to talk about anything right now. No hellos, no how are yous. The algorithm said we need an aggressive hook. People in YouTube are quitting this podcast too soon. So listen to this, people of YouTube. Your kid is under constant evaluation. Your soccer kid is terrified of making mistakes, and it is all your fault. Did I get your attention now?
Oof, got my attention. In youth soccer, the difference between players isn't often significant. So why is one playing with confidence and thriving while the other is ready to quit? It's not their technical ability. It's what's happening in their head.
I also did another thing, Matt, which is pretty crazy for me. And I actually, I had to do it, but I read a book. And after reading this book, I understand that I'm the most ultimate untrained emotional coach, the greatest of all time.
We were really fortunate to be joined by Dr. Kim O'Brien and Dr. Jonathan Jenkins, co-authors of Mentality Wins, which focuses on the mental side of the game for athletes, not including Liron. Their book breaks the mental game into 4 pillars: focus, flow, finish, and flourish. Jonathan serves as a team psychologist for the New England Patriots and the Boston Red Sox and is part of the Harvard Medical School teaching community. Kim works with athletes on mental health and performance and has been affiliated with Boston's Children's Hospital and Harvard programs. This is a book by athletes for athletes.
Parents, coaches, take out your notes app, because if you've ever had a car ride go sideways, see what I did here? Or you ever watch your kid play scared, this episode is for you. So welcome to Chasing the Game. I'm going to be direct because this is kind of what I do. But when you look back, okay, we were all teenagers once and you were athletes. What were the pressure points for you? Do you have any recollection? And Kim, why don't you start?
Sure. Well, I'm old. I mean, I'm 47. So when
Did you come from a sports family? Were you hockey players
Yeah.
in your family, right?
Yep, big hockey family. My dad played, my brother played, and just like lots of relatives played. It's a love for all of us, really.
And JJ, for you?
So I think the big thing for me was that instead of somebody growing up right now who's a teenager, the big thing that I was comparing myself against athletically were the kids in my school, kids in my neighborhood, kids in my town, maybe the kids in my state. But now a teenager can compare themselves against, kids in the country, internationally. They can get all the stats, they can get the videos so immediately. And so there is this seduction with comparison. And that was something that I just didn't feel. I was either really good at my school or really bad. And that was the only pool of people that I was comparing myself against, which was a pretty small pool. And then when it came to sports that I liked, it was very much focused on particular athletes that I was interested in. So whether it be, members of the US World Cup team when we were young, like Kobe Jones and stuff like that, or it was the Agassiz or the Michael Jordans, I would fixate on those players and try to be like them. And I wasn't necessarily comparing myself to other kids because the technology wasn't there to do that at my age.
Right. So no social media. Basically, you had absolutely no stress. I guess okay. You can admit it. It's fine. But so
Yes.
You're looking at it now. I mean, you've done enormous amount of work in the field. The book is a representation of that. But when you were a teenager, did you already have that kind of ability to separate the physical side and the mental side, or you were in absolute chaos, and that's why you've gone into the fields that you've gone?
I'll first say, I don't think the physical and the mental side are separate. I think they're so intertwined. But I certainly was never taught any skills of how to manage my emotions in or out of sport. That was something I really worked through a lot in college. Not super successfully, I'll say, but which is partly why I do the work I do, because it was so hard for me. And I was fortunate to, learn things later, in life that have been helpful that I wish I had known back then. But now I get to help teach kids and young adults that now. So it's rewarding for me.
Yeah, I'd say for me, one of my biggest issues was that I was involved in a lot of individual sports. So I grew up playing tennis and I just could not manage the stress of every point was on my shoulders and all these people were looking at me. So actually playing team sports helped a lot. I got into soccer, basketball, lacrosse. So these opportunities where I could shoulder some of the load of competition. And then also I could be with my friends when I was at practice. And so being able to have some gratitude, have some relationship, have some camaraderie really allowed me to deal with the stress of sports better. But I think a lot of us for Kim and I especially, part of writing this book was cathartic because we realized we were able to make amends with some of those tough situations early in our lives by sharing them with the reader and show the ways in which we've grown and the ways that we're excited about continuing to grow as parents of athletes, but also as older athletes in our lives right
So in a way, why now, right? Why write the book right now? Why not? Why now click Command P and print it? Why now bind it? Why? What is this moment right now for
Well,
the
I
two
think
of you?
kids need this now. I mean, there are so many stresses, pressures, things that these kids have to deal with today. And our world now, our society now is a little more open to the importance of mental skills.
Mhm.
And when we were talking together about writing the book, what we were talking about with each other was like there doesn't really exist a book that isn't like a textbook but is more mainstream for young adult athletes that have stories that you can connect to or have like specific skills open up the page to and utilize right then and there. So we wanted to make something just, you know, really pretty easy to read, just something that any like teen or, young adult athlete can just pick up and, flip through and find some things that work for them and that they could use right then and there to help enhance their mental health and their performance. Well, the other thing too about this book is okay, yes, maybe it's written for the athlete, the young athlete to read, but it's also really critical that coaches and parents are reading it too, because
Mm.
especially if we're talking about parents, you know, they're the ones who are ultimately teaching their kids about how to regulate your emotions, how to deal with your difficult coach, how to cope with the fact that you're not getting playing time. Like you're as a parent, you need to be armed with skills so that you can coach your child through those skills. So that this is why the book too could be helpful for parents if they just want to understand like how do I help my kid become more confident on the field? Like what types of things does my kid need to do? It's all right there. So, as a parent, like you're that first line for them of helping them develop this stuff.
And I
Uh,
think what makes soccer unique about this is there's so many different directions that you can take the sport, right? You got your academies, you got your local ball, you got school connected ball. So all these different avenues are there to cultivate skills, just enjoy the sport in general, be able to get that player developed. Whereas other sports, like if you're trying to be really good at basketball, chances are you're just probably going to do AAU. If you want to be good at baseball, you're probably just going to do travel ball. But given the proliferation of all these different ways in which soccer players can really advance their skills and be seen and recognized either to go to college or go professional, there needs to be a little bit more nuance in how we support them and how we help them identify not only what's going to be the best situation for you physically and skill wise, but also what's going to be the best situation for you mentally and emotionally.
Yeah, we see so much labeling and tiering in youth soccer starting at 9 years old,
Yeah.
8 years
Yeah.
old in some cases, honestly. And the top team, the second team, this league, this badge, a lot of it's marketing, some of it's real. Um, we've got something now which you guys may be aware of, which is called bio banding that they have just in the MLS Next League, which allows for kids to play up or down depending on if they've fallen behind in size and growth, or if they're or their own development, or they have a late birthday, which I think is great. But it's complicated, and I think that's kind of what we try to unpack here. And I'm just curious. I'd love to get into your work specifically in this book in the 4 pillars. You cover off focus, flow, finish, and flourish. Can you talk about how you landed on the 4 and what each one of them should mean to the reader and to our audience?
So when Kim and I were thinking about writing the book, we were looking at the other books out there. And a lot of the other books out there just really focused on, hey, these are things you should do when you're playing your sport or doing that high performance activity. And we felt that was really limited because some people might be really good at focusing before the event, but not really good focusing during the event. Or they might be good focusing during the event, but during those crucial moments, they struggle. So we broke it up into 4 different categories: preparing before the event, during the event when you're actually competing, how to manage those crucial, really stressful moments, and how to flourish and enrich your life both mentally, but also in a performance standpoint in between competition. So this allows people to kind of pick and choose what area their strengths are so they can improve their strengths, but also what area their weaknesses lie so that they can figure out how to manage those as well. So the book can be read in one sitting or from page 1 to page 200, or it can be kind of like a buffet. I really want to work on my pregame routine. So I'm going to read that chapter. Oh, this chapter is about play. I'm going to really enjoy this so that as you go through your athletic career or the challenges, you can always pick up the book and either revisit or explore new topics.
Yeah, so our focus part is the beginning part, and that's really where we talk about how you can focus your attention to where it matters most. So you're beginning your practices or games with the right mentality. Then we kind of shift into the flow section, which where we really emphasize the use of mindfulness and things like play and enjoyment to access your true potential and help you stay locked in the moment. And then the finish section, that's where we talk more specifically about performing under pressure and like how to show up, how to bounce back from mistakes, that sort of thing. And then lastly, the section on Flourish is where we really focus on things you can do overall to enhance your own mental well-being to help you grow as a person and a teammate, because it's really when you fall deeper in love with yourself and your sport that you're going to feel better, you're going to play better, and things will fall into place.
Yeah, I mean it's pretty. Look, I mean I'm probably the ultimate untrained emotional and soccer coach. You know, I'm the guy everybody doesn't want to go to.
That's not
So
true.
what we thought to do maybe is to kind of look at some pressure points that we recognized in youth soccer, both for parents and for kids, and kind of see what your take on them is. Okay, it would definitely be the opposite of what I would do. So as we discussed this idea of these, like Matt said, this infinite elite system and hybrid systems and whatever. So the kids always have, because the path is so non-linear and there's so many organizations and way more confusing than most sports in the United States, the kids always feel that they're under constant evaluation. Mm-hmm. So you always have multiple tryouts per year for different leagues or different brackets, different tournaments, meteor movement all the time. You see kids in and out of team constantly. I know from one of the academies now, there's a 24 group team. They're sending 8 kids plus the rest are tryouts. All the other kids have to go look for other teams. So, I mean, it's just this imbalance that happens all the time. Mm-hmm. So when I look at it from this side, obviously it affects attention, mood, confidence. Where does that fit into the 4 pillars?
Oh, well, fits into a lot there. I guess I'll just start by saying that, like, this constant evaluation you're talking about, we see this in a lot of youth sports too, not just soccer, but it's huge in youth soccer. And I think what that does for these kids is it can create this constant fear of making mistakes, where and what we know about playing at your potential is you need to play not afraid to make mistakes. You need to be playing like with no fear, like not being able to take risks. So if they're constantly worrying about that outcome, right, about that the outcome of making this or that team or getting X amount of goals or X amount of saves, if they're constantly worrying about the outcome, they're not going to be fully immersed in the process, the actual playing of the game and what they're doing. So it's going to be not only harder for them to enjoy what they're doing, but in turn, it's going to be harder for them to perform at their best because they're not going to be fully present in the zone. So that being fully present in the zone, that's like a flow thing. But in the finish section is where we talk more about like concrete skills to use to manage that fear of making a mistake. Things like self-talk and using like cueing words to reset yourself after a mistake, things like that, where we teach those concrete techniques. But also what I'll say too about that, I've just said all the negative things about this constant evaluation that's happening. The one thing I will say is it does provide an opportunity for these youth players to build resilience, to learn how to work through adversity all the time, because they're constantly being put up against, difficult situations. So if you're a coach or a parent who can help your child reframe this as, wow, this is so exciting. You get to go out here and do this and fight for your spot, rather than saying, oh my God, I can't believe this year you have to go out and try out again. It's like all how you phrase it, how you use, how you shift the mindset and how you look at it.
Yeah, totally. And just to echo what Kim said, feedback is not bad. It's how you give it and how you receive it. So the ability to teach kids how to receive feedback in a positive way, teach parents how to support the receiving of that feedback in a positive way, teaching parents how to receive feedback in a positive way from coaches, and then also teaching coaches like, hey, you got to break some bad news to a player. How do you do that so they don't fall out of love with their sport? How do you do that so you don't break the player, but you let them know, hey, you're not on the team this year, or you're not going to be starting, or, we're going to have to figure something out. So I think that's one. And then two, with the constant evaluation and like you said, the churn, one of the issues with that is confidence. If I'm just meeting these new players and I'm not able to go a long period of time with being able to practice with them, build relationships on the field, off the field with them, do I have the confidence to pass them that ball, to rely upon them in game situations?
Mm.
Or if the roster is churning so much, these new people are coming in and you have the threat of, I don't know this person, can I trust them? And I don't know this person, are they going to take my job? Are they going to take my position? Are they going to take my playing time? So in a sport like soccer where there is this roster churn, the coach and the staff really have to come up with a culture that supports, hey, when new people come in, we get them connected into the community really quick. We embrace them and we figure out how we can be competitive, but add that camaraderie so we can have confidence when we go out and perform against other schools, other teams, other academies.
We had an interview with a former PSG player, and he talks about his early academy years, and he brought an example of, he says, and he didn't answer, but he asked that question: is what do you do? He said, when your teammates don't want to pass you the ball, what do you do? He didn't answer it because none of us could, but that was like a frozen moment. And I was thinking about, we were thinking about our boys at the time. You're right. It is that there's a special dynamic that happens on that field. What do you do? And is that a flourish thing? Is that a finish thing? What is it? What is that kind of, what can you trigger to help out in a situation like this?
I think it depends on why they're not passing him the ball. Is it because they're not commanding that confidence to want the ball? Or is it because of some interpersonal issue that's getting in the way? I think if it's some interpersonal issue, then there's going to be a communication concern.
But I would argue that parents struggle with being patient in a lot of cases. Kids struggle with being patient. They want to see the yield of the work that they're doing or the club that they're on or the fact that they're commuting 2 hours a day and they want to see the results. And ultimately, clubs struggle with patience, hence their roster turnover. I'm just curious, how do you approach, so everybody agrees you need to be patient in development. And I'm not saying there's some out there who aren't, whether it's an academy, a coach, a player, but from our experience, it seems to be lacking and it seems to be fairly universal. How do you approach it, both as a parent, but also how do players need to think about that? And you can touch the coaches piece too.
I think coaches and let's say staffs, right? High school staff, academy staff, travel team staff, they need to appreciate the fact that not just them, but everybody is really bad at evaluating talent, right? Unless you are an outlier and you're either really, really good, generational star, really athletic, or really, really bad and you should not be playing. This is not your sport. We can do something else. Those people in that happy middle, if trying to identify a talented 9-year-old for the academy, 12-year-old, 14-year-old, 16-year-old, think of any major sport draft. They get it wrong. Number 1 pick, they get it wrong. Top 5 pick, they get it wrong. Often they get it right, but think about all the resources and time that went into it, and they still weren't able to get it right. So if we're going to have an opportunity to get it wrong, our priorities, particularly in youth sports, still need to be centered around how do we take this opportunity that we hope turns out well and use it as an opportunity to cultivate great humans, great members of community, great societal members, so that this young person, when they develop into adulthood, we've given them skills for them to be successful. And if they happen to turn out to become great soccer players, as we hope they will, bonus. That's fantastic. Not only will they be great marketing, but they'll be great on the field, great in the community, great with their teammates. But if we are actually honest with ourselves about how often we get it wrong, including how often we get it right, then it shifts the whole dynamic of these expectations that we have as coaches, as parents, and also as the players ourselves.
Right. I mean, it's amazing. It's just brilliant what you just said. But we've been in youth soccer for a long time, and usually most of the kids in certain level are pretty much the same. I call it 51-49. That's kind of the physical difference of those kids, except for the Rockets. And we had the director of NYCFC who said there are Rockets, and Rockets are a different thing. But everybody else is kind of in this middle. And what I guess separates many of them is mental fortitude or recovery from mistakes or confidence. So I understand these things you could work on them and train them, but are they small, minute changes, or this is something that could be a life-changing for a kid if done properly? When not on the extreme, when I'm just talking about that kind of improvement towards a certain goal.
I think it can be life-changing after practicing it over time. So that's our focus part is a lot about building strong habits that support your goals and committing to those things over time. So I think if you can start teaching kids things like how to use positive self-talk through your practice, instead of saying like, "Oh, I suck," say to yourself like, "I got this," just as a little kid teaching them like that focus on that positivity, just ingraining it into a habit, it will become how you perceive yourself over time. So I think it's helping them like at multiple points in multiple doses work on these things. I think it will have an enormous impact at the end.
And I agree. You think about that 51-49, right? If everybody's doing the same thing and no one is taking care of their mental health, the performance aspects of their mind, now you doing it provides something novel that everybody else isn't doing. Your brain and your emotional capacity and your intellect is exponential. I'm going to get only so fast, only so strong. I'm only going to be able to jump as high. I'm only going to be able to know soccer so well. But if I'm emotionally mature or maturer than my teammates or my opponents, now, not only when I'm on the field do I take that more seriously and I'm more locked in, but now I'm more locked in with my nutrition, with my lifting, with my film study, with off the field issues as a 16, 17, 18-year-old. I'm going to be better at having the discipline and the focus to generate my attention into something deliberately when I need to and be able to do that more consistently than the athlete who lacks discipline, lacks focus, lacks a vision of what they want for their future. So that emotional health and that performance rises all the tides of all the other areas in that player's life on the field and off the field. And that's why Kim and I feel it's so important.
One area of like call that we talk about called grit, which we all know about what grit is, but a lot of these athletes don't really know like how to build it. But the thing with grit today, it's so important because our kids are being pulled in so many directions. They can just get on their phone for any second. Like it's very hard for kids today to really focus in on a goal they want to achieve and carve out the time and the effort every single day to put towards it. So helping them learn like what it means to be gritty, what it means to, persevere towards something that you're super passionate about every single day. So, and you can do this in small doses with your teams by giving them a grit building challenge for 2 weeks. You're going to work on one skill that you want to improve every single day. And then you can rate yourself before and after on how you've done with that. So it's like little things like that that you can infuse as a coach or, maybe a parent if you don't want it, but as long as you're not feeling like a pushy parent to your kid. But helping your kid to see like, when you commit to something like that, you will also, not only will you probably get better at that skill, but you're going to feel proud of yourself that you put that extra time into it. And you know what? Down the road, when none of them are playing Major League Soccer, which the majority will not, they're going to be able to apply that to the job they work at or, like this college they go to or whatever it is. So they're all like important skills that they're learning in this youth soccer that they can then apply later on in their lives with respect to mental skills.
When I think about elite soccer players, let's say from anywhere from U12 on up, they're training anywhere between 3 and 4 days a week, roughly, let's call it an hour and 45 minutes each session. Then they do their own work on the side. Then they play a match or two on the weekends. And this is for 10 months a year.
Mhm.
What did your research show as far as how much time, whether it was in soccer or in other sports, coaches, clubs, academies, leagues are actually focused on the mental health piece of it and helping build resilient, strong athletes?
Well, I can answer that now.
Oh, it's a zero.
Exactly.
Yeah. So how do we change? I mean, hopefully this book is read by millions and people start to understand that there's ways you can do this within your team, within your household, whatever it may be, where it cascades down. But why isn't it prioritized? When we have tools like Zoom and we have other ways to gather a team that's not just in person, because I get it, kids are running to get home and do their homework or whatever it may be. Why aren't we spending the time when it ultimately is the differentiator back to the 51-49, where the kids who are mentally strong develop an advantage and ultimately have a greater chance of succeeding if the talent aligns to that?
I think the leaders of the teams need to be fully bought in to the importance of it. And not only that, but it shouldn't be treated as an aside. Like, okay, now we're going to work on mental skills. No, it needs to be infused in every single thing you do, every single way you coach. All the time, you're always focusing on it. So, I'll give I'm just with my hockey team all the time right now. So I'm thinking about them all the
Sure.
time. But like, I'm trying to do this now as a coach, infuse these mental skills. So, I'm literally teaching them, okay, in the middle of a game when you're feeling really stressed, we're maybe up a goal and we're super stressed out, or maybe they score on us, and how does that feel? I'm literally teaching them skills like the physiological sigh, which Jonathan knows what that is, but it's basically a deep breathing technique that helps bring your level of arousal down so that your thought processes and your body movements are more in sync and can help you better. So I'm teaching them things like that in the context of the hockey arena. So I think things like that need to be happening in soccer, where after a kid like shanks a ball or whatever happens, it's like, and they're, go throw like a temper tantrum. It's in those moments, you don't just yell at the kid like, stop crying. What are you? It's that you're like, you bring them over to the side and you try to explain to them, you know what? I bet that was really hard, but let's talk about, let's just try to reset yourself a little bit here. Like, it's just one goal. Like, are you going to even remember that you missed that shot in, by tomorrow? Maybe they'll say yes. What about in a week? No, probably not, right? Okay, so let's just let it go right now. We don't need to think about that. But it's like trying to get coaches to buy into using like those types of skills and things like that embedded within what they're doing is going to be, I think, the difference maker.
Yeah, and I think trying to prevent or re young people from thinking about, well, if I have some mental health challenge, that my coach is going to see that as a deficit and I'm going to get cut for it. So
Yeah.
if I confide in my coach that I'm struggling with anxiety, will that coach trust me with the penalty kick? Or will that coach trust me to start versus I'm struggling with it, and if you give me some help, or if you allow me to get the help elsewhere, then it shouldn't be a problem. Because if across all major sports, international and domestic, there are plenty of tremendous athletes who struggle with anxiety, both in competition and outside of it, or depression, or substance use, or whatever it may be. And they're still able to be productive. But for a lot of young kids, the desire to communicate some of those internal feelings, which can be very dark, very confusing, can be very challenging. And for the coach, some of us, and I'll throw myself in there, being an adolescent was tough. TUFF, tough. So if I'm not dealing with my own stuff and I'm also not trained about how to do the ask in a way that makes me feel comfortable, in a way that makes a young person comfortable, then I'm never going to ask. I'll acknowledge it in this nonverbal way, like a dude talk where it's like, huh, huh, and grunting and all that other stuff.
Mm.
But I will never get to a level where we might actually be able to do the work in a non-clinical way to make that person feel more comfortable and to be the caretaker that I actually want to be. Because I got into coaching to be a caretaker, to develop young people and to support them while they try to do this really cool thing that we all enjoy, aka play soccer.
Soccer is maybe unique in the United States because it has that giant middle class of players that have these multiple supposed paths to get to the success of college or pro or play in Europe or whatever. But it's also unique in the United States because it's actually kind of a second or third tier sport where Americans are very used to having kind of top dog sports. I find that youth soccer players are more vulnerable in that sense because there's just more of them. And it's something that I look at it from the side, and what you said was I get it, but it almost seems like it would be something that would be impossibility with the way things are structured right now. How would this even be implemented into a system?
Yeah. And I think that's what the USA soccer is really trying to figure out, right? We have these talented young people in our country. We have an enthusiasm for soccer. We have the ability to train them, get their nutrition right, be able to get them the best facilities. But we're also having trouble distinguishing that, again, that elite class of athlete, because everybody's telling us that this player is really good. But then when we try to evaluate them, the results get muddled. And I think you're exactly right that because societally and on social media, they're not getting the attention that they deserve for their athletic endeavors, there can be a lot of, well, I'm not going to play this sport anymore and I'm going to go somewhere where I'm appreciated. I remember I worked with a soccer player, two sport athlete, played soccer in another sport in the spring. And his whole thought process was, well, it's hard to talk to my friends about being this good at soccer because they just don't understand the academy system and like how much I've achieved. So I'd actually rather play at a lower level in a more understood sport than play at this really elite level in a sport where you said it's kind of like second or third tier in terms of attention span in American households when it comes to sports. And that killed me because it's like you spent so much time and you're excited to
Yeah, wow.
play, but yet the social pressure of, hey, let's go play basketball. Hey, let's go play lacrosse. Hey, let's go play football. You to kind of have this divorce from your.
Yeah, and I think even
Wow.
that specific challenge is even greater. Continues to get greater because if you're playing at one of the elite clubs, at one of the MLS Next clubs, the homegrown version of that, you're not allowed to play high school soccer. So you're
Mhm.
removing and look, for some kids who are quote unquote rockets, or for many kids, the development environments that they're in at academies is much better experience from a development perspective, gives them a greater chance to play in college. Like nobody would argue that. Unfortunately, it seems like there's a lot of kids in that boat who aren't rockets, who are then losing the opportunity to play with teammates, friends, and to develop kind of that emotional element, mental element of you have a game on a Tuesday afternoon and then you show up at school the next day. Whereas I think, the story you're alluding to, there probably had something to do with the two sport athlete. Like you're playing at a really high level in the elite academy and you're playing in front of 25 parents and family members essentially, and nobody's seeing you play, right? So there's a challenge I think that kids are facing in the sport here, where it's like they're getting pulled from maybe what they want to do because of the path that they think they're on, and hopefully they're on that path. But if they're not, then I just fear they're losing a critical experience.
I mean, when we talk about healthy identity development for youth, it doesn't mean let's just focus completely 100% on soccer. Like, you cannot fully, healthfully develop your identity if you're only concerned about one thing and one thing only. Got to have other elements of your life to be able to fully develop as a person. And I'm not, and believe me, I'm pro academy. My daughter goes to a hockey academy. I'm pro academy. But you only if you help your child develop their identity outside of the sport they're in. If you don't, and something bad happens in that sport, it's going to be really hard for them to bounce back.
Yeah, their whole identity is tied up in it.
Yes.
That's the greatest risk, right? You've put all their eggs in one basket. I just have a question for you guys. You mentioned anxiety and depression and some of the other issues. It feels like we're living in a culture now, where a society now, where we talk a lot more about mental health and the importance of it. But it also feels like there are a ton more kids who are dealing with, and I don't know the statistics, I'm sure you guys do, so please jump in with them, who are dealing with anxiety, depression. They have ADHD or ADD or something else. Do you see those numbers going up in a staggering way, or are we just hearing about them more? And given the challenges around devices, which you mentioned earlier, and we've talked a lot about on this show, how do you manage through these things as a parent and as a player?
Yeah, it's certainly tough, and we think even from a childhood perspective. So, my wife and I have a 7-year-old, 7.5-year-old, as he wants to tell everybody, and not seven, Dad. I'm 7.5. Just watching TV when he was born a little bit before COVID, and so all those YouTube shows where they cut the shot every 3 seconds, and it's shifting attention, and so it primes his brain to always be looking for stimuli as opposed to old Mickey Mouse cartoons or Darkwing Duck when I was a kid, where you'd have these long are going to be impacted by the things that you're impacted by.
Like, in terms of actual statistics, I don't know offhand what those are, but I think like when we're looking at high schoolers, for example, I think like approximately 20% of them have had some sort of a major depressive episode. And I think the anxiety is higher. I think closer to 30. Jonathan, correct me if I'm wrong in these.
Mhm.
But what I do know is
Oh.
that the anxiety's increased more so than the depression. And I think part of the reason for this, is some of what Jonathan was just talking about with like your attention being pulled in all these directions. And it's also when we talk about sport, I think it's a lot because there's so much choice now that kids have. And when you have more choice, it creates more uncertainty and more questioning. And what is the best place? Like, let's even fast forward to college, the transfer portal. This has just
So,
opened up a whole wide range of problems, right? It's because there's so much choice, and kids always think like, well, if I was at this place, maybe that coach would like me better, or if I was at this place, like, I'd be on, the first line or whatever. Is like, so I think with all that choice, there's so much more thinking, and with more thinking, there's more anxiety. So and this is, that's just anecdotal. That's not research, but I think that's certainly part of what we're seeing happening with respect to anxiety in sport.
Yeah, but I think it connects to kind of what I want to bring in next, which is really the swath of our audience, which is parents. So as I was reading through the material, I said, well, I took a couple screenshots. I said, oh, maybe I'll print a couple things for my son. I'll post it also. And then as I was kind of going through it, I said, A, I feel like I need a lot of this.
Yeah.
And two is I'm not sure that I am the person that can relay that information to him. And it made me feel, I got to be honest with you, as I was kind of going through it, I was starting to feel that kind of knot in my stomach where it's like, oh shit, I don't think I'm the right person to do it because I need someone to do this with me. And I is this something that you've come across as far as you're trying to communicate the material?
and I love when you get vulnerable like this.
I'm a softie. What can I say?
Well, I think it's so hard being a parent of, how old are your youth players?
My daughter's a gymnast, 16, and my son is a 13-year-old soccer player.
And mine is son is 14 and my daughter is 8, both soccer players.
Okay. So my kids I've got 4 kids between the ages of 12 and 17, all play sports. So I feel.
No wonder you wrote a book.
Yeah, exactly. You can
replace
replace
a podcast, forgive you a book.
You can replace Liron on this if you want to be my
Writing
partner.
the book was my therapy for having 4 teenagers.
Exactly, like this podcast. Yeah.
Gosh.
No, yes, but seriously, because it is. I can just speak personally as a parent. What I see happening is it's oftentimes hard for me to see my kid in distress. And so my initial gut instinct is to try to do things to fix it. But thankfully, with all the training I've had, I can sometimes take my parent hat off and try to be rational about it and remember that it's so important that my kids fight through adversity on their own. I'll be there, just support them. But like, it's good for them to try and fail things. It's good for them to try to work through a really difficult playing situation. Or if, they've got a terrible coach or whatever it is, it's good for them to have to manage that. Because what's going to happen in 20 years when they have a terrible boss and they need to figure out what to do? Do I quit my job? Do I stick through it? What do I do?
They'll call me. I don't understand.
Can I ask though? I think I've struggled with this specific challenge with my son about a year ago, where it was kind of a defining moment, I would say, for him and for me, where he decided after joining a team after 4 months, or they decided that he was going to play on the second team after they selected him for the first team, and he was training 4 nights a week. He was in the commuting 2.5 hours a day. He had come from a pretty great environment. So hindsight's 2020 on why we make these moves. And if I could do it all over again, I wouldn't. And that was completely on me. So I think I put him in this position. But he came to me after that conversation and said, I don't want to do this anymore. And this was a kid who had never complained about training, didn't complain about the uncertainty about how much he was going to play or who was playing next to him or what it was going to be. And he didn't really talk for 2 days. And then he came back and said, I don't want to go back. And I really struggled with, do I let him grind through this and this is going to be a lesson? Or is he going to hate this so much that he wants to quit the game?
Mhm.
And I decided that I was going to listen to him, that he was mature enough to say, this is too much for me. It's not that I don't think I can play, but it's not fun anymore. And when I heard that, I kind of lost my mind that he wasn't having fun and he was going to quit. I felt like the risk of him quitting was far greater than us finding a different club for him where he didn't have to commute 2 hours, each day, and that he could still play and grow and, get a better experience. But I'm just curious, did I do the right thing, or should I have let him grind through it and showed grit and stuck it out?
Well, first of all, this is a
I
judgment-free zone. We're parents here too, and we all make the best decisions we can in the moment. Parenting's not easy.
I would say the best thing that you did, a lot of parents would react to the "I don't wanna do this," and that would bring up the emotions for them. How much time I spend driving you there, how much money it
Yeah.
costs,
Mhm.
the threat of soccer being eventually over. But whatever emotions that came up related to that, you were able to put them on pause, quiet them down a little bit, and you leaned into your son and said, "Okay, tell me why." And when you open and allow that openness for the why,
Mhm.
not only does your son then hear that, files it away in his, brain and says, "Okay, when I'm in a stressful situation, dad's going to hear me out." And that's going to be applicable for there's a party and there's beer at the party. There's the I can't drive home tonight. I'm trying to figure out which job to pick. When you ask that why, then you get to understand their thinking, their logic. You can file that away as a parent. Okay, my son usually gets stressed out about social things or about appearance or about challenge. And so that you can push them given that knowledge. But a lot of parents would hear that no, and they would start this combative argument about trying to get their kid back into the sport. And I think, like Kim was saying, it's great to build resistance. And it's also great to recognize when a relationship is over and that
Yeah.
it's time to cut bait and that there are other opportunities out there that might serve you better versus banging your head up against the wall, thinking that something's going to work. Or on the flip side of it, quitting something entirely without exploring the options that are already out there. But I joke with people all the time. I'm a trained child psychologist. When I was working with kids before I had kids, I was like, kids, these parents don't know what the heck they're talking about. Then I become a parent and I'm
Yeah.
like, parent, these kids don't know the heck what they're talking about. It's so hard. Kim, we should know best what to do as parents. And we still get stuck and snagged on the same things
Yep.
that any parent would who doesn't have the clinical training as us. And it was such a humbling experience to become a
Mm.
parent, to recognize that I fall in the same traps, the same
Mhm.
quicksand that I've tried to help my parents avoid. But the best way for me to avoid those is when I get upset, I need to stop. I need to chill. I need to take a moment so I can create that breath between the stimulus and the response. I can pick and choose how I want to respond, but I also let my son unravel himself, teach me what he needs to teach me so I can respond based upon his needs, not responding based upon my discomfort.
I'd love to say I didn't react that way at all. There was definitely some of that, but I think I ended up in the right place.
I mean, this is where the narrative becomes very complicated, especially. So my daughter, as I said, is in gymnastics, but I have no emotional affiliation with the sport itself.
Mhm.
I want her to succeed and be happy, and we've hit some walls in that, but kind of mature through it. She's a junior now, and her path is set. She's happy where she is. But soccer is something I love, and it's something Matt loves, and a lot of the parents love, and it's something where all of a sudden the narrative becomes kind of all tangled up between the kid journey and your journey. And that's why, as I was saying, as I was reading the material, I was like, I felt like I couldn't be objective to relay that information because at the end I was seeing myself. And that's where it's complicated for me. And it's not something, it's something. So as you kind of try to train your kid through it, which is, you said, you need patience in all process. Do you first have to train yourself as a parent? That's not the answer I wanted to hear. But I thought this
Check
was
your
a good
baggage
guide.
at the door.
Yeah.
Check your baggage at the door.
I'll
Oh.
never forget when I first learned mindfulness. So one thing to know about me is I was an extreme perfectionist all through college, extremely high anxiety. I also had depression. I had so much going on, okay? But I never forget when I first learned mindfulness, I remember having this huge emotion of sadness of like, I can't believe I never learned how to be so fully present like this before in my life. So I think it's the same with parenting of like, okay, maybe you're still learning some of these mental skills because you were never taught before. It's not your fault, but you can learn them now and you can become a better dad now.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that, and I credit my wife for this, shout out Molly, she would not let me call our son a kid. She's like, he's a tiny human. Our son Ford did not ask to be born. We decided for him that he was coming into this world. And so it's our job to take care of him, but also allow him to have agency. And Kim knows this. Even at 6 years old, I sat my son down and said, you know that you're supposed to listen to your dad all the time. Yes. I said, there will come a time where I'm going to tell you that you should or should not do something. And you're going to know in your heart that I'm wrong. And you have to fight me to make sure that what is in your heart is what you end up doing. And I might not know that that moment is happening, but it will happen. And I want to trust you and raise you so that when that moment comes, you will fight like hell for what you think you need to do in your life. And so those moments of friction between parents and their offspring, some of that is really building independence, is building maturity. How do I yell and have an argument and a disagreement with my parent, with my caregiver, somebody that I love? How do I fight and advocate for something that I truly believe in? Think of all the great athletes, soccer players that we know. There's probably a point in time where they had to convince somebody that this was their dream, or they had to fight for it. They had to disappoint a loved one. They had to get in an argument with their parents. They had to steal money to get soccer cleats. They had to convince them to drive 3 or 4 hours to practice. Like those moments are coming for all of our children. And we have to be open enough. We have to deal with our baggage so that we can listen and pause in that moment and say, maybe you're right. Or how do we make this complicated thing work so that you can be a participant in that moment versus creating a permanent fracture where your kid's like, well, forget this. This person doesn't understand what I need. And I have to remove them so I can get to where I want to go.
I think the biggest issues we see are when youth soccer parents cannot differentiate themselves from their child. So their child's successes they identify with as their own. This is why, and we see this in hockey all the time, where like you see the people, like the parents who played hockey and had their own careers, they're not doing that to their kid. It's the people who didn't necessarily have it or maybe fell short. I mean, some of them do. We won't generalize too much, but it's those parents who are living vicariously through their child's success that's become so damaging. And we see it all the time, right? Where they're pushing their kid to this level because, it's like, it feels like their own success. It shouldn't. It's your kids' success. It's your kids' stuff. You're separate. You're the parent, just like Jonathan was talking about. Like, you're just there to be with them and support them through their life that is their own. And it's a hard thing to do as kids go from, babies to youth all the way up to teenagers. And, now we're at this point, like with these teenage kids that pretty soon they're going to be out and they're going to be making their own choices. And it's a scary thing for parents. And I think they tend to latch on sometimes and over identify with their kids' successes.
A lot of things that come up is the car ride home, right?
Yeah.
So, Kim, I'm going to ask you because you have experience in hockey. You're a coach. You're with your kid in the car. Something didn't go right in a game. They're sitting upset. Are you able to check the luggage at the door, or you are?
Yeah.
Gosh.
I've had to. My kid. So I feel like I've learned. I've seen the worst. Like I've just seen, the worst parenting you can imagine. And when I start to feel myself attacking my kid, and I'm not saying I haven't. I've done bad stuff too. I'm not, perfect. I'm very far from it. But it's at the point now where all I want for my kids is to love their sport. It really is, and to work hard at it. I do want. That's where the little tension comes. If I see, all right, you're not putting in your 100%, that's when Mad Mom comes out. But when they come home from a game and they've made a mistake, not played well, and it's not an effort or an attitude thing. If it's an effort or an attitude thing, they're getting the mean mom because that they can control. But if it's a total just they had a bad game, which kids have, I'm just saying to them the tried and true line, like, oh, I'm sorry, like that, sorry you don't feel like you played well. You know what? I just love watching you play. It's just so fun for me to watch you. I literally try to say that to my kids as much as I can because there's too much pressure on them, especially the higher level they play at. Like, they feel like if they make one mistake that they had a bad game. And it's sad. That's not what
Yeah.
sports is
Yeah.
for. So
And
I'm not
you're
I'm not
able
gonna let my kids feel that way.
you're able to recognize if something is effort based or something is, like you said, a
Ah,
random occurrence, or that's also a tough one.
It is a tough one. It is. I'm not saying I can all the time, for sure. But I think for me, that's an important distinction because that's my value system. Attitude and effort is more important to me than, achievements and success. So for me, that's why it's fine for me. But I'm not saying it's fine for every parent.
Yeah. One of the strategies that I use is this idea of when somebody's in a bad place, car ride home, stress after the game, thinking and asking them when you have that relationship, do you want comfort or do you want a solution? And so
Mhm.
this was taught to
Wow.
me a while ago because they might want a solution. Hey, Dad, what did you see? Teach me and help me brainstorm and debrief about this. Or they might want a Big Mac. They might want food. They might want their Gatorade. They might just want their iPod so they could sit in the back of the car and just zone out for a little bit. But if we pick comfort when they want a solution, we're misaligned. And when we pick a solution when they want comfort, that can be even worse because they're pulling for us to be that parental figure that gives them the hug, that holds them close so they can, feel us on them and feel that support. And when we go to, well, this is what I think you did wrong and this is what I think
Mhm.
happened, we're really missing a bonding opportunity for them. So as your kids get older, you can really ask that moment. But also the thing that Kim and I tell people all the time, when they hop in your car, their body's stressed. Their heart rate could still be jacked up. Their body's sore. Their adrenaline's running. So if they're punchy after soccer practice or after a game, it might be that their body needs to calm down. Their parasympathetic nervous system needs to kick in. And then you can have the conversation about their appraisal or their assessment or the debrief. But if you're asking them that where their heart rate's still high, their adrenaline's still coursing through their blood, and they're still like in kill 'em mode or fight or flight mode, you're not going to get the response that you want. And they're not going to necessarily be responsible for their actions.
And our vitals are also in danger zone.
Yeah.
Right after a game.
Yep.
This is not.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. No. Wow. So much to digest. Wow, I was going through the material. I was thinking, okay, there's some course corrections I can take, and there's a lot for me to learn. But part of and you put it in there. Part of game time decision is a split second decisions, right? So if you had to kind of simplify it, a kid makes a mistake on the field. There's that kind of immediate kind of gut punch. Where does the training come into effect then? The mental training, is it before a game? Is it something that is slowly taught for them to react a certain way after a very intense moment in a game?
So I would say for that, one of the things that I would want to train away is you can make an error, but I don't want you to be an error repeater. And when you're an error repeater,
Yeah.
that can often mean that you make a mistake and you're not gathering data from where that mistake came from. It could be an effort mistake. It could be a positional mistake. It could be tactical. It could be technical. So when you make a mistake, can you extract that data so that that error doesn't happen again? Or you're an error repeater because you make a mistake, your confidence goes down, your self esteem goes down, and you're more susceptible to making a mistake again because you're becoming less resilient. So when it comes to avoiding mistake, I normalize that, hey, error is going to happen during the course of a game. What we really want to do is learn from each error in the same way that we get excited about learning from each success. So when I make a nice cross through the middle, I want to figure out how the heck did that happen? But also when I don't, I want to be able to say, okay, I was too late with that last touch, or I took too long of a dribble on that last dribble. And that's why the mistake happened. It's not an indictment on who I am as a person. The mistake didn't happen because I'm stupid or I'm unlovable and nobody on the team loves me. It's that I had a bad touch or there was a really difficult, pass coming in and nobody could have made a shot and I at least got my foot on it and made an attempt. So being able to have that dialogue, take the um, persecution out of the situation and do more of that analysis so you can figure out what's going on.
Yeah, I like to do a really specific analysis of the mistake with the athlete after the fact.
Mm.
So, let's say, I don't know, let's say it's doing it as their mental skills coach rather than their actual coach, right? So I might afterwards, they might talk about a mistake that they made in the game. Okay. Maybe they took a shot and missed the net. Okay. So I will say, okay, let's talk about that. Right after you miss the goal, what what were your feelings in that moment? And then I'll have them describe those to me. Like, I was pissed off. I was angry. I was embarrassed. I was whatever it is, because there's a lot of different emotions it could be, right? Okay, when you felt that way, what then thoughts did you have that were associated with that? Like, what were you thinking in your head? Then it was like, I was thinking, I suck. I can't believe I just did that. Like, that was terrible. Okay, what was your body doing after you were thinking that? Well, I just went like, oh, and like threw my shoulders back, and I was just like starting to like, tense up and get more heated. Okay. Then I would say, okay, so now how did that make you feel after you behaved and acted like that? What did that make you feel like? And then it's usually, well, I felt more angry, more embarrassed. And then how did that make you think? So, see the vicious negative cycle that can
Mm.
happen? So, then what I try to do with athletes is say, okay, now let's figure out where we can intervene. You can intervene right after you make the mistake and you may have that initial reaction, but if you start to react like feeling like, oh, I can't believe I did that, then you can intervene either cognitively, like with a thought change, or you can intervene behaviorally with something that you do. So a thought change might be like, okay, I'll get the next one, or just using a cueing word like a reset word like next play or something like that to get you back present again. Or your body language, if you start to slump your shoulders, it might be like, oh, I got to get my shoulders back, or I've got to like run fast uh, to get the ball back, to whatever it is that it is. So it's teaching them, because then if you do that, then you're going to feel it's going to take away some of those negative thoughts. So I try to really kind of like show them like that cognitive triangle, how those thoughts, feelings, and behaviors all interconnect, and how they can make changes that they can control so that they can help. Maybe you can't change your feeling in the moment, but you can change your thoughts and you can change your behaviors to impact your feelings.
Yeah, we had an academy director here a couple weeks ago, and he said something that you just mentioned. He said, "Well, if when he's looking at a player, if they make a mistake, it's a non-issue, of course. But if they make the same mistake, then there's something that's a little deeper than for them a skill level, or and it's I mean this
Or understanding. Yeah.
yeah.
Can I have a question? How the challenges that you see with youth athletes, how much of it is actually brought on by the athlete themselves and the pressure they're putting themselves on, or the environment they're in, whether that's at home or with their team?
Well, I always look at the athlete as a person within environment context, right? I don't think you can't look at a person just solo, like insularly, right?
Hmm.
Person is always affected by their family, their friends, their physical environment, their social environment. It's all intertwined. So I think, it's important when you're talking with the young athlete, I think, to really examine for them when they're getting stuck, like what things they're not, feeling like they're able to get over or get past, and what that relates to. And I think the way you do that as a clinician, like a sport clinician, is by really getting to know and understand that person and the soul of who they are and what their values are and what's important to them. So it's like peeling back the layers of an onion till you get like to that real like hearty middle where you're trying to really understand like who this person is and what they care about, because at the end of the day, that's what's going to help them learn how to bounce back and learn how to disconnect their self-worth from their performance, which at the end of the day is what's going to help them, succeed as an athlete and also like in other areas of their lives.
It made me think about that whole nature or nurture debate that you sometimes hear
Mhm.
about in biology. And I think what Kim and I believe is it's nature and nurture for sports and for young people, which is actually really great because sometimes it might be hard to change somebody's biology. Like I'm just a naturally anxious person. So that if I was working with Kim, the best way that Kim might be able to impact my life might be to change things in my environment, change the way that changing a team, right? The team's too stressful, the commute's too long, it's causing too many problems. So maybe I play at a D3 school so I don't have the commitments and the challenges of NIL and all the other commitments that I have for a D1 school. So just changing my environment allows me to actually perform well because emotionally I'm more centered, or maybe it's another change that could be helpful. And so we pull on certain levers based on our training in terms of how we can impact the biology of somebody through cognitive skills and behavioral skills, but also make suggestions when appropriate on the environment, on the nature or the nurture of where they live and how coaches interact with them, parents interact with them, and the structure of their training that may best promote a resilient young person.
So, I mean, this leads me to kind of, as we're trying to kind of wrap this up, but thinking about the bigger picture, especially since we have younger kids, what I find very difficult, and I found through the years, is how do you actually recognize as a parent what is a healthy environment for your kid or for your kid to be in? I find that to be always very difficult because I always tie the environment to the success of the environment on scores or kind of a badge, or call it whatever you want. But in a way, I'm sure I missed the boat on that multiple times. But
Yeah. I think for me, the kids parrot things that they learn, right? Particularly if we're talking, say, under 8, under 9. So if they're starting to echo some of the positive things that coaches mention to them, not only the words, but also the actions and how they cope with things, that's a coach or a system or an academy or a team that's infusing your kid with resilience building tools, right? Like they're able to bring skills that they learn on the soccer field into the household and how they tackle their homework, how they tackle their younger sibling or their older sibling, how they communicate to you. On the flip side, if you start hearing some of the, for lack of a better word, abusive comments and terms that a coach is saying to your child and having your child parrot that back, and that it might be time to remove the child from the area, have a conversation with the coach, or find other interventions, the things that I would look for.
I think the main first thing I look for, or that will become clear to me, is if the kid stops loving their sport.
Mm.
And if they do, then it's like, okay, why? Let's figure out why. What is this about? Because it could be about a problematic, toxic environment, or it could be about the way they're perceiving their play and their performance. So that could be something more that you can work on, or it could be something burnout related where it's about overuse and they're doing too much. But people fall out of love with their sport often, and but for different reasons, and I think it's about figuring out what's happening so that you know the proper next step to help them.
Yeah, I mean, I actually believe it's totally normal when you're competing at the very highest level or trying to fall out of love, have moments where you fall out of love with it. Certainly happened to me in different sports when I was growing up, and I think it's normal. I mean, you commit so much time to something, and I think the human nature element of it is bound to catch up at some point where you have these feelings, right? And there's going to be moments where you love it more than you loved it 2 years before, and it's the inverse. But back to, how do you cope with the ups and the downs, right? How do you try to keep it as consistent as you can and avoid the highs and avoid the lows, so you continue to be as focused as you can possibly be on development and then ultimately working towards something you're trying to achieve.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that, speaking about the academy ball, that is one of the challenges with players not being able to play for their high school. Like, you might be a great player at the academy, but you're not getting any playing time because the academy's loaded. But maybe going to high school and being able to play and being able to be recognized for being a great athlete and an asset to the school, you're bringing wins to the school, you're bringing recognition, that could do a lot for a kid's self-esteem and give them a little bit more juice, a little bit more love of the sport to be able to carry them. I mean, think about that. If somebody's playing soccer 10 to 12 months out of the year, think of how quickly they would get to the amount of soccer that you all have played in your lifetime.
Yeah.
Like very, very
incredible.
quickly.
I
Yeah.
try not to. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
Yeah. So when I was thinking about the idea of focus, there's a possibility that earlier than later that they're not going to be able to continue, not because they fall out of love with it, or it could be injury, or maybe they're just not good enough to sustain that environment that they're in right now. Is this something that you've kind of prepared them for, or do you just, is it always about, no, be your best, do your best, it's going to be fine?
I think you always want to make sure they know that they are more than their sport. Like this soccer is something they play. it's not who they are, right? So I think the more you can kind of ingrain that into your kid's head of like, there's more to you than soccer. Like, and I know you love soccer, and that's awesome that that's what you want to spend your time doing. But at the end of the day, it's going to end at some point. So you've got to have other aspects of your life, other things in your life that are important. So I think it does need to start early because you're teaching your kids self-worth and that it doesn't depend on achievement and that it doesn't, and that they're not defined by what they do, but instead by who they are and what's important to them with respect to values.
That's tough.
Well,
It is tough. Parenting's tough. Why did we do it? Why did I do it 4 times?
How come
My
your
husband
book
and I
didn't
always
exist
talk
when I
about
was
that.
in my early 30s?
Great. God bless you. Well, I mean, Dr. Jonathan Jenkins and Dr. Kim O'Brien, the authors of Mentality Wins, thank you guys so much for being on. Why don't you just leave us with one thing that you'd love parents and youth athletes to take away from this great book that you've written?
One thing,
I
that's
was gonna
hard,
give it
huh?
to you.
I knew you were.
Okay,
I saw you.
okay.
Why does it have to be one? You know what? Let's negotiate.
We can edit this.
They give us an hour and a half. Take 2.
I will say, the one thing is it's never too late to help develop your child's mental skills and ability to manage adversity. And not only is it never too late, but it's so important for them to learn the skills to do it on their own independently because at some point they're not going to have you around to be able to do it. So our hope for this book is that it is an opportunity for young athletes to be able to learn how to do some of these things on their own and learn how to take care of their mental health so that they can feel their best. And when they do feel their best, they'll also play their best.
I would agree with
Great.
that and just see sports as a celebration of health, your ability to be out there, indoors, outdoors, being mobile, being active, and how joyful it is to see your young person do all of that. And then when they get off the field and you're in the car, you're in the bus, and you're going back home, cultivating those moments that are going to be special that they'll remember where you get the ice cream or you play the favorite music in the car or you have a convertible, you put the top down. Those are the
Mhm.
things that they're going to remember about you more so than what was the score of that game. They're going to remember, my parent would always take me to our favorite pizza place after we played and we'd always talk or
Yeah.
hang out by the beach or whatever it is. And so
Right.
how do we cultivate and connect this sport that they love with this really cool private unique time with our parents that will then continue to bond and build a relationship.
My daughter just she has a gymnastics meet this weekend, and she said so. Again, like I said, we had a lot of ups and downs with that sport and her development there. But she sent me a song. She goes, "This is the song we listen to every year. I can't wait to get in the car and just hear that song with you." And that just for me was So I'm not as bad as I portray myself to be, but
I love that. Yeah.
I will tell you that I felt so grateful to hear from you and receive the book. And my wife is already reading it, which is unfortunate for me. I was trying to keep it away from her, but you have a mic here anytime when it's time to do version 2 or updates, and we will always be in touch. And thank you really for all your work.
Well, thank you so much for having us on. This has been an awesome conversation.
Yeah, we can't wait to follow you guys and this journey that you're both on with your kids, but also your practices. So thank you for all that you do.
Whew, Matt, you went to a fancy school. What's the college way of saying wow? Anyway, this one hurt in a lot of ways.
Because it reminds us that development isn't just physical. The mental side is the multiplier.
I mean, Jonathan said it best, right? Feedback isn't the problem. It's how we give it and how our kids learn to receive it.
And Kim gave us the sideline reality check. If kids are playing afraid to make mistakes, they can't find the flow. Without flow, there's no growth.
So next time, if you're in the car, things feel slightly intense, remember Jonathan's question. Do you want comfort or solution?
And remember the cognitive triangle. Thoughts, feelings, and behaviors are always connected. And that's the real 2% edge.
So if you're a parent or a coach, go get Mentality Wins by Dr. Jenkins and Dr. O'Brien. It's practical, honest, and it helps. I think it helped me. So we'll know next week.
This is the work that keeps kids in the game and helps them excel.
Yeah. So I'll see you next time, man. Hopefully I'll be healthier, happier, And if not, I'm sure he
I
still
was just
loved me.
hoping for funnier.